Hello and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with a nationally known attorney, Chris Stewart. Mr. Stewart is the managing partner of Stewart, C. and Fulton Trial Attorneys, a personal injury litigation law firm here in Atlanta. Attorney Stewart is regarded as one of the top injury trial lawyers in the state of Georgia and is also the recipient of the Esquire Award from the National Bar Association. He has been named a super lawyer for the state of Georgia consecutively from 2011 to 2016. Additionally, in 2012, he was named to the Atlanta Business Chronicle's list of Who's Who in Law as a top Georgia attorney. Today we'll learn more about Mr. Stewart and his experiences here in Atlanta. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulton Justice. Joining us now is attorney Chris Stewart. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you today. So you have done so much in your career, and we'll talk a little bit about all of your awards and different things that are just really significant. But talk a little bit about your background, because you are from Atlanta, from Southwest
Atlanta. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background growing up here, and then how did you come to the concept of being an attorney?
Dumb luck. I mean, growing up in Southwest Atlanta, I grew up on Cascade, not too far from John A. White Park. Went to middle school in the West End. It's not it's not the affluent side of Cascade. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't know any lawyers. I'd met maybe one growing up in a car accident that my mom and I were in. But then I had the luck to end up going to the Lovett School for high school.
Okay.
And so I think that seeing both sides of Southwest Atlanta and then going to a private high school where I played basketball, a bunch of different things, it showed me a whole different world. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know people had elevators in their homes. I didn't know homes had gates around them.
Right.
I had never interacted with too many people that didn't look like me.
Right.
And so it just shaped a lot of my personality and thinking early on.
So you've always known you wanted to be a lawyer?
No, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Wow.
Because I loved animals, and then I thought I wanted to become a doctor when I was at Xavier, because that's what you go to Xavier for, and
Right.
I quickly learned, that's not going to happen. And then I wanted to do psychology, which I graduated in, and then ended up at public health school at Tulane.
Right. And so let's talk about that, because that's just a very non-traditional route to get to law school, right?
Yeah.
So you went to Xavier for a degree in psychology.
Yeah.
And then you went to Tulane for a degree in public health. And then you went to Howard for law school. But that's a real non-traditional path. But how has that really shaped your career, and how did you bring all of those experiences together?
You know, I started really getting into environmental health and environmental science. So that's kind of what led me to Tulane. And then when I graduated with my master's in public health, I got a job with the EPA in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
So then I moved there for almost a year or so, I think. And that's what led me to law, because I was on a task force where we went out, we monitored cancer clusters, and we would go to the actual city when we found one, and we would have to interact with the people, educate them on what was going on, why they were all sick. And we also interacted with the companies who we found out were responsible or potentially responsible.
Right.
And I just remember one time in Florida interacting with a young lawyer who was representing this whole town that had been poisoned. And I was like, I want to be like that guy. So
Wow.
applied to law school, said if I get in, I'll go. If not, I've got a good job. And there it
happened,
is.
right? So that's a great story. You know, people talk about falling into their career. That actually really happened for you. I mean, it just kind of came together.
Absolutely no plans on becoming a lawyer.
Yeah. So, you know, you've won so many awards. I think you've won the Esquire Award, and I think you're a super lawyer. And so you have so many things under your belt. And so, you know, people talk about what's important to you. It could be personal and it could be professional. But to date, What do you think has been your greatest accomplishment?
Two,
Okay.
how we handled the Walter Scott case with so much national and international pressure and media on us. It changed the view, I believe, in a lot of people's eyes of what an African American lawyer can do and how you can affect the whole community. And then I also think really just building Stewart and Fulton from 3 of us to now 20 of us or so, and open in Macon, open in Columbus, and trying to get into a few other states.
Yeah. So your background at 29, you became the partner of a law firm with 200 lawyers there, which making partner is big in itself. Making partner at 29, is that heard of? Is that unheard of at 29? I mean, that's young.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure, but I always like challenges.
Yeah.
And, it was a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
You know.
So making partner at 29 with a law firm of 200 and then transitioning and making a decision to go out on your own. I mean, talk about what type of decision making process you had to go through. I mean, you go from being in a situation where you wake up every day and you know where you're going to creating your own firm. So talk about that decision making process.
Probably the biggest decision and scariest decision that I've made, because I was leaving a job that was paying very well. 3 of my mentors worked there, Keenan Nix, who taught me everything, and Chris Craddock. And I'd been there so long. We started off with maybe 3 or 4 lawyers in Atlanta, and by the time I was leaving, we were at 30, 20. I don't even know how many. But I just knew I wanted to create something and kind of handle cases the way we wanted to, pick the ones we wanted. And to be honest, I hadn't seen any large African American firms. And I just always thought that would be a good image to show kids from where I was from.
Right. And so you, speaking of kids, I don't know how you found time to do it, but you found time to also be engaged in the community and do community work. And you have a nonprofit that handles all of those great things with kids that you're still involved in. Can you talk a little bit about your community work?
Yeah, I'm just one of those people. I know I'm not really anything special. Like didn't have great grades. Actually, had reading issues growing up for a while in elementary school, but I made it because of other people. And I just think that so many kids want to be in the entertainment industry or in this or, play sports, and nothing's wrong with that. But it's largely because they don't get to see lawyers that look like them.
Right.
So if you could see it, you can be it was formed to take lawyers back into the inner city and just show them we're here. Yeah. We're not anything special. You can do the same thing if you just stick to it. And the same thing with Project CPF is just taking care of issues with inner city youth.
Probably some of the most important work you could do, though.
Yeah. It's tiring because we literally pretty much take almost any speaking engagement at any elementary school, at any event. But if it's about the youth, we pretty much say yes.
Yeah. So when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of your other community work because you're doing a lot of things, and specifically with the Southern Center for Human Rights. So we'll talk about that. Stay with us. We'll find out more about this great attorney shortly. Welcome back. Today we're talking with nationally known attorney Chris Stewart about his work in the legal community and here in Atlanta. Thank you for being with us once again. So let's talk about the Southern Center for Human Rights. I think we both agree that's a wonderful organization. I've had the pleasure of being introduced to the organization this year, but you're on the board.
Yes.
And so talk about how important the work is that they're doing in our community.
I was shocked to be asked to join the board. it's just such a great organization, and some people have heard of it, but the work they've done impacts everybody. I mean, the work they do with jail abuse, with women, abuse allegations, and just the work they do protecting poor people down here is phenomenal.
Right.
And they fight it all for free.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about that in general. We talk about the importance of having good representation, quality representation. And even though I think, that may not be the sphere for every attorney, criminal work, but how important is it to just have access to quality representation?
I mean, it's the primary importance because that person holds your life in their hands.
Right.
Be it a civil case, a criminal case, a case handled by a Southern Center, the lawyer who has your case decides the impact on your life.
Right, right.
So it's crucial.
And I think it's important in Atlanta because we have such a high number of folks who are indigent and can't afford attorneys. And so to have the Southern Center just seems to be just a great opportunity to kind of connect. So talk about, you've been really all over the nation lately, and you've been handling a lot of controversial cases, primarily those that deal with families and people who are affected by some excessive force. And talk about how those experiences, the experiences that you're having now with those types of cases, really relate to the work that you're doing here in Atlanta.
They're probably some of the most difficult cases because of the public scrutiny, the public, when you take one of those cases, everybody's looking and watching. And they're personal cases because I'm actually a strong supporter of police and officers in general. A lot of my friends are officers. So it's not something we just sign up and just take lightly. It has to be something that truly we know from the facts and in our heart it was just wrong and shouldn't happen. Because you have to understand, being a police officer, it's the only job that you can take someone's life, liberty, property,
absolutely,
and be unquestioned in most situations. So we just fight when it's wrong.
Yeah. And just as a follow-up to that, I mean, you do a lot of work here in Atlanta, and talk about, really what is the landscape of the work that you do here in Atlanta? What does the landscape look like for those who are not really familiar with the legal system?
They vary. We've handled a couple of the high-profile taser cases where an individual has been handcuffed and excessively tasered and died as a result of it. We've handled some shooting cases where the person just did not deserve that level of force. And from handling a lot of those, we're getting pulled in different states now.
Right.
So probably, I'd say twice a week, we get asked to come to another state and handle a case there, and we just can't take them all.
I think it's exciting. We talk about folks who grow up in a community and choose to come back to a community and be a part of that community as part of their career. And you've certainly done that. And so talk a little bit about what has been most important for you here in Atlanta and the work that you're doing. What's been the most rewarding thing that you've been able to do here in Atlanta?
It's small. This is probably one of the things was when our firm first opened, we put just a huge billboard right in Southwest Atlanta on Cascade. And we didn't do that for to sign up cases because we knew that's not the primary way to do that. But we did it as a statement, and we would constantly hear about the shock that people would have driving down Cascade right in front of the biggest store and seeing 3 African-American lawyers, looking down from the billboard. And that billboard probably was our opening statement to that whole community. Because now I know when I used to drive down it as a kid, I would have the image now of seeing lawyers that look like me driving down the street every day. I mean, we just think that doing stuff like that, sponsorships and different stuff, probably has a greater impact than our cases do.
Yeah. So we talked about some of the awards, being named as a super lawyer, and you've received a lot of awards, and we've seen them over the course of your career. Talk about how important it is to be recognized by the legal community here in Fulton County and here in Atlanta, because there are a lot of great lawyers here, and there are a lot of great things happening as a result of those lawyers. So talk about being honored by your peers and what that means to you as a lawyer.
You know, the main driving goal of myself, my partners, the firm, is just we want to be recognized as great trial lawyers. Mm-hmm. So that's why we push a lot of cases to litigation, a lot of cases to trial, and we're proud when we get a verdict in a county, because I know that verdicts mean a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, being in Fulton, we've gotten, you know, ones in Camden and a number of different outlying counties. Mm-hmm. You know, we just want to make sure that people know we'll go fight in any county, any place, anytime, because that's the only way to get somebody justice is they have to know you're willing to fight.
Right. And so you've practiced in, 24, 25 counties here, and Georgia's a big state.
Yeah.
What's different and unique about Fulton County or the Atlanta area as opposed to some of the other counties that you've represented folks in?
In Fulton, I mean, you know, I can use the I'm from right here, you know, line, but, you know, it's very diverse. I mean, you can go to court one day and the jury looks totally different than the next day.
Right.
Totally one demographic one day, totally different demographic the other. And it's just a variety. Yeah. And people pretty much call it if they see it. Yeah. You know, that's what you pretty much understand from Fulton is they're going to pay attention and they're going to call it like they see it.
Your legacy, you're going to have a great legacy here in Atlanta. What do you think it will be?
Hopefully that I made some type of a difference other than winning a big case or settling a big case. That, you know, that's just the goal with even how we handle our cases is try and impact people that you don't know are paying attention.
We're going to have some final thoughts shortly, but thank you for sharing that with us. Please stay tuned as we offer our final thoughts on today's show. Welcome back. As we conclude today's show, we have one final question of our phenomenal guest. So, Mr. Stewart, we've had a great show, but if you had one piece of advice that you wanted to give to young up and coming lawyers, what would it be?
Just know that nothing's going to be given to you. You know, you got to try and strive for perfection and just fight. I mean, and that talk is easy, but staying up late, putting in the hours, will end up getting you the respect that you want.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks again to our special guest, Chris Stewart, for joining us today. And thank you for tuning in to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'll see you next time.